Hi all, greetings. I'm Jo Henderson and welcome to another Dux-Soup live event. This week I'm joined by guest host Derek Little from Trailblazer Mastery for this workbook-led interactive session to get your outreach firing on all the right cylinders. In his own words, Derek works with consulting and expertise-driven firms before pipeline friction becomes pipeline instability. I like that quote, Derek. So we are thrilled that he's here today to share his exclusive, in fact, with our own audience. Before I hand over to Derek, let me walk you through today's format. So you'll find a few buttons on your screen to book onto our upcoming events, or if you're new to Dux-Soup, then you can request a demo or simply start your free trial and we'll get you up to speed through our online onboarding program. The resource section on your screen is where you'll find the link to your workbook for today, as well as a few other articles that you may find useful. The Q&A window is open, so if you've got any questions, ask away. I'll answer what I can, and Derek, I will put all the other questions, all the juicy ones, to you at the end of the session. The recording will be available from tomorrow, and you'll be emailed with the link, and all the resources will still be accessible from that recording, so there's no need to panic download anything. Just watch and learn and make the notes as you go along. And without further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Derek. So it's over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Derek Little, and I work with B2B consulting firms. I help them build buyer confidence before the first sales conversation. And I'd like to talk to you about how some firms get great results on LinkedIn while others end up spinning their wheels. And the difference is what I call the authority gap. And to show you what I mean, I'm going to compare two clients I've worked with who've used the same tools, the same effort, but got completely different results. And we're going to be using a workbook as a thinking tool today. And rather than trying to complete it during the session, what I suggest you do is you go back through it with the replay. And at the end of the session, I have a free tool for you that will make it much easier to complete the workbook. So I'm going to turn off the camera while I'm speaking because I really want you to focus on the slides. So I suggest you expand the slides, and then I'll turn the camera back on at the end of the session during the Q&A. Okay. Okay. Whoops. Sorry about that. Okay, this slide compares the results from two clients I helped. And here's the idea that I want you to notice. Same tools, same platform, different outcomes. So company A created more activity, more connections, more surface level responses. And let's be honest, on paper, it looked like things were working, but they got very few meaningful opportunities. Company B created less activity overall, but buyers understood them faster. Conversations were better, and they generated more qualified leads. So here's what this tells us. Activity can fool you. It can look like momentum, even when buyers aren't really moving closer. So the better question is, are buyers moving closer? So let's take a quick poll. Tell me which side feels closer to your current situation, Company A or Company B? And while you're taking that poll, I also want to mention that you'll see the workbook sections numbered on the slide. So there's 7 workbook sections. And so before we look at the authority gap, I want you to ask yourself, give the rest of the voters a bit more time. Tell me what's changed in your buyer's world. Like what's making outreach harder now? Okay, very interesting. Looks like we have a split decision. Okay, so whether you know it or not, one big change that's happening right now is LinkedIn itself. So the old game on LinkedIn was basically this: get in front of more people. The new game is be relevant to the right people. So part of that is the big algorithm shift that LinkedIn started in 2025. Now, I know there's a lot of information here on this slide, but you can review it later. The main point that I want to make is simple. LinkedIn has shifted from reach to relevance. So the old game was post more, connect more, send more, and the new game is be relevant to the right people. So there are still things that you can't control. You can't control the algorithm. You can't control the noise. You can't control the amount of competition that you have. But what you can control is your positioning, your signals, how relevant you are, your clarity. So here's the shift. The goal isn't more reach, it's more trust. So if you adapt, you'll build trust faster. If you don't, you'll keep creating activity without creating enough conversations. So now we're moving into section 1 of the workbook. And here I want you to do a quick gut check. Are buyers seeing you but still not trusting you? So this slide shows the difference between between being seen and being trusted. So the point is, most firms still think the problem is visibility, but the real problem is buyer confidence. So back to my example, company A created lots of visibility, but company B created less visibility, but more confidence. So for example, this is something that may be happening to you right now. Imagine a buyer opening your profile, skimming a few posts, maybe even visiting your website, but then they move on without a second thought. So what they really wanted to know was, do you understand my world? Are you credible? Are you relevant to me? And if the answers weren't clear enough, they didn't respond. So the point is, being seen gets attention, but being trusted is what creates conversations. So now go to section 1 in your workbook, and this will help you see your business through your buyer's eyes. So what signals are you sending? Where might buyers still feel unsure? So don't overthink this. Just jot down whatever comes to mind, and you can come back to this later with the replay. And again, if you think of a question or an example, just drop it into chat and we'll cover it during the Q&A. So now let's look at why tactics alone don't solve this. You've probably received messages like this in the past. Technically professional, but easy to ignore. So it makes you wonder, what are buyers interpreting from your outreach messages? So here are 4 things that can stop buyers from taking the next step. Too much noise, you're unknown, they don't know, they've never heard from you before, which equals risk. There's no context, and wrong timing. And if your message feels generic, it'll get lost in the noise. So here's the key idea I'm trying to get across here. Professional doesn't always mean trusted. So company A was very professional, and they relied mostly on outreach tactics. Company B used tactics as well, but they used them to create more context over time. So based on my experience, tactics aren't the villain here. The issue is what those tactics make buyers think. So the question isn't just what you're sending, it's what buyers are concluding. That's key. Let me say that again. The question isn't just what you're sending, it's what buyers are concluding. So here's an example. There's a big difference between saying, we offer digital transformation consulting, and saying, we help operations teams fix the bottlenecks that cause digital transformation projects to stall after kickoff. So the second one feels more real. It cuts through the noise because it names a real problem. It reduces risk because it sounds more specific and credible. It adds context because it connects to the buyer's world, and it improves timing because stalled projects usually already feel urgent. So this is the part people miss. Buyers need 3 quick answers, very quick. Like, what do you do? Why does it matter? And why should I trust you? So in section 2 of your workbook, think about where buyer confidence may be breaking down for you. Where do buyers hesitate? Where do they lose interest? And where do they stop responding? So let me show you the simple 4-step model behind all of this. So what conclusions are your prospects drawing from the signals that you're sending? Okay, this is how buyers decide whether they should talk to you or not. Signal, interpretation, confidence, conversation. So the reality is, the problem usually happens at the interpretation stage. So what are signals? Well, your profile is a signal, your content is a signal, your website is a signal, your outreach is a signal. In fact, every touch point gives buyers something to judge about you, but they don't respond to the signal itself. They respond to what it means to them. So here's the practical point. Buyers aren't just seeing your signals, they're drawing conclusions from them. So what conclusions are they drawing from your signals? Do you believe you understand them? Do they believe you can help? That's the chain reaction. So signals create conclusions. And conversations only happen when there's enough confidence. So here's what this looks like or would look like in the cybersecurity industry. If a vendor talks mostly about their solution, buyers may assume that they don't understand the real pressure that the buyer is under. Things like data exposure risk, third-party risk, board-level accountability. So if this is you, they may assume that you just don't understand any of this just because you left it out, even if you do understand it. So back to my example, company A sent signals that were seen but not really trusted, whereas company B sent signals that were seen, understood, and trusted. So that's the key shift. Outreach doesn't fail only because buyers don't see you. It fails when what they see doesn't build confidence. So in section 3 of your workbook, try to look at this from the buyer's point of view. What signals are they receiving? What might buyers be assuming from those signals? And what would make them feel more confident? And again, if you think of a question, just drop it into chat. I'll answer as many as I can during the Q&A, and if we run out of time, I'll try to follow up as well. So how do we create the right interpretation? This is where it gets useful, and that's where authority signals comes in. Okay, so here's the question. Can buyers actually see why you're credible? So here are 4 signals that help buyers recognize authority: clarity, relevance, credibility, and trust. So what matters here is that buyers need the right signals before they trust you. So being good isn't enough. Buyers have to see it. Authority happens when buyers see your expertise and trust your judgment. You can't control every interpretation, but you can shape it. So for example, for clarity, what you want buyers to think is, I understand what you do. And for relevance, this applies to me. For credibility, you seem like you can help. And for trust, I'd feel confident talking to you. So think about it this way. If buyers have to read multiple posts, visit your website, and still try to figure out what you do, you're making them work too hard. That's too much homework. But when all your signals reinforce the same idea, buyer confidence starts building faster. So company A was visible, they just weren't clear enough. Company B focused on the buyer's problem and outcome, and that made them more relevant and easier to understand. So here's what matters. Authority isn't just expertise, it's expertise made obvious to the buyer. So in section 4, start building the buyer's story behind your outreach. And this is where you need to think like a storyteller, okay? Stories are how people make sense of things, and a strong story can make you instantly more relevant. You don't need to overthink this. The goal is simple. Stop pitching your services and start telling a story that your buyers recognize. And the workbook will help you see your business through their eyes. So now let's see what this looks like on your LinkedIn profile. Ask yourself, when someone lands on your profile, do they get it quickly? Or do they have to work too hard? So this is actually a third client example. So it's not company A or company B. And I'm using it because there's a clear before and after. So before, the old version on the left was credible, but it didn't really plant a flag. It showed my client's expertise, but it was hard to place. It could have applied to almost any lawyer. So it kind of looks like a template. The after version on the right that I created for them, okay, this new version creates a stronger authority signal. Cyber risk, legal defensibility, board level risk, left of boom readiness. So here's what I want you to see. Weak positioning makes buyers work too hard. Strong positioning is specific. It's buyer focused. It's problem aware. And it's easy for the right audience to understand. So for example, many of you probably don't know what left of boom means, but in the cybersecurity, they know what that means. The boom means there's some kind of breach or ransomware attack. Left of boom means when you have time to prepare. And then right of boom is when it's too late and you're facing a class action lawsuit. So company A's profile image described their services. That's basically what it did. Whereas company B, their profile image described buyers' problems and specific outcomes. Not at first, eventually. I worked with them. I worked with both of these clients for approximately 2 years. Company B was probably closer to a little less than 2 years. So what does this mean? Strong positioning, weak positioning. Strong positioning helps buyers get where you're coming from faster because they want to know, is this for me? Do they understand my problem? Can I trust their judgment? So the goal isn't a better looking banner. It's helping buyers read your expertise correctly. And you basically got 2 or 3 seconds, so very quickly. So in section 5 of your workbook, look for where your positioning may be too broad. Does it describe what you do, or does it describe the problem buyers care about? And how could you make it more specific? Now let's zoom out and look at how trust is actually built. Ask yourself, are you trying to get attention, or are you deliberately building trust? This slide shows how buyers move from noticing you to trusting you. So the shift is this. You don't earn trust just by showing up in someone's feed. You earn it through repeated signals. So moving from the left to right, you earn attention by saying something relevant. You create relevance by helping the buyer see themselves in the problem. Then you prove credibility by showing examples, evidence, insights, or outcomes. You improve timing by showing why this matters now. And by now, you've reduced their uncertainty and you've built trust before the first conversation. So now they're ready to get into a conversation with you. So here's a quick example from the supply chain industry. The supply chain consultant shouldn't just talk about improving performance. They need to connect to what buyers already feel. Delays, shortages, rising costs, supplier risk, business impact, ROI. Okay, so the takeaway is trust isn't created in one message. It's built through repeated signals. So in section 6, think about what needs to change so buyers can trust you faster. Where are you earning their attention? Where are you proving your credibility? And where could you create more relevance or urgency? So remember the model that I showed you earlier? The 4 steps: signal, interpretation, confidence, conversation. Now let's take a look at how these work when the signals are stronger. Okay, so here's what happens when you get this right. Okay, this is what company B did better. They send signals buyers could understand, believe, and act on. So this is what the model looks like when the signals are working. You got the right signals, the right interpretation, strong confidence, and serious conversations. So the right signals means you have clear positioning, you have useful content and relevant outreach. The right interpretation means buyers see you as being worth their time. They can tell you understand their problem. Confidence builds when buyers see you as relevant, credible, and worth trusting. And then conversations happen when more buyers are ready to talk seriously. And that's when outreach starts getting traction. This is when they start talking to you and responding to your outreach. So company B didn't just do more, they made it easier for buyers to say, this is relevant to us. And this is what changes the outcome. Better outreach starts before the message is sent. So in section 7, it's the final section of the workbook, try to spot the main thing holding back buyer confidence. What signal should you strengthen first? What would help buyers interpret you more clearly? And what would make conversations easier to start? Because this is what your salespeople are struggling with. If you have salespeople, they're very frustrated. They're trying to get into conversations. So if you haven't done all this work leading up to the conversation, it's brutally hard to get into a conversation. I've been there. I've worked in sales quite a bit. Okay, so feel free to add a comment and chat on where this may be breaking down for you. Okay, let's bring this back to the big picture. Let me leave you with 5 takeaways. First, attention. Getting seen is only the beginning. Second, interpretation. Buyers decide what your signals mean. So the point is, it's not just what you're sending, it's what buyers are concluding. Third, authority. When you have it, buyers feel more comfortable engaging. Fourth, timing. You become more relevant when buyers see why it matters now. And finally, fifth, conversations. They only happen when confidence is high enough. So if you remember nothing else from this presentation, remember this. More activity isn't the win. More confident buyers is the win. That's what you want to shoot for. That's what moves the needle. So this is just briefly, I just wanted to add, this is the kind of work that I do for clients. So we look at why buyers aren't responding and what needs to change before the first conversation. And if that's something you're dealing with, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And also, if you want to go deeper, I have a new book called The Authority Gap that expands on this framework. And there's a link inside your workbook at the bottom right-hand corner where you can get 50% off. So no pressure on any of that. I just wanted to leave you with that option. So I hope this presentation has given you some new ideas. The replay and the editable workbook will help you think it through. So if you haven't downloaded the workbook already, it's editable. So once you download it and you open it up, again, you can enter notes and then you can save it and it will save your input. So then you can open up the workbook again and your notes are still there. And then finally, I mentioned I have a quiz for you, and I highly recommend that you take this quiz. So on the next slide, I have a link that you can click through to, or you'll have to enter it in as a URL, but it gives you your 2 quickest wins, and it makes completing the workbook a lot easier. It only takes about 3 to 5 minutes to complete, and it will show you what your biggest workbook improvement area is. And this is where buyer confidence may need the most work. And it will also show you your core narrative priority. And on that one section of the workbook, I give you 8 story elements to focus on. And your core narrative priority is the part of your story that probably needs strengthening the most. So you don't have to take this now. You can take it anytime. It'll stay online. Okay, so now...
Sorry, Derek, I just wanted to ask, is that the, I've just flicked the slide on, thanks Keith. Is that the trailblazermastery.com/diagnostic? Is that the link that you're talking about for the quiz?
That's it, yeah.
Fabulous. What I'll do is I will add it into the email that we send out, the on-demand link for everybody as well. So we can make sure that you get that if you can't see it on your screen, or if you can't click on it. Yeah, Robert said the same thing. So thank you, Derek. Now to the questions. So first and foremost, from myself, thank you very much. I really so I'm very much a writing it down person. So for me, having this workbook to go through, it's not just about listening to you and taking a few notes. It's actually really beneficial for me personally to go through that workbook and actually fill it in. And I think it kind of makes you accountable as well. So rather than just take away from this training session, it's like actually it's something you can leave on your desk and work back through and check whether you're actually doing the steps that you've kind of set yourself. So I think it's fabulous. So I've got a few questions here. Keith has said excellent presentation. Thank you, Keith. That's to you, Derek.
Thanks, Keith.
Let me just check on some of these questions then. So Ray has asked, what's the best way to check how signals are being interpreted?
Well, what you want to do is,
what would you suggest people do?
What the first thing I would do is I would look at what kind of responses you're getting. So you want to get what you want to find out is how much confidence you're creating. So if they're replying to your, and now if we got more specific, you're just doing outreach. Are you asking them a question in your outreach? I mean, how they respond depends on what your message is. If you send them a message saying, look, I want to send you a series of content that I've created, and you create some curiosity and you offer them value, you might get responses like, that sounds interesting. I'm looking forward to it, right? So you're building confidence. You would actually, I mean, if you're asking, I mean, I would have to know which specific signal you're asking. Are you building confidence? Like, for example, if your LinkedIn profile, are you sending the right signals through your positioning? That's a real positioning opportunity, your LinkedIn profile. But what you really want to figure out is, are you creating confidence? Are they replying? Are they getting into conversations with you?
Yeah, you're right. And if there's no engagement, then that's kind of, it's flat, isn't it? So your answer is right there.
Well, I wanted to add though, because I've done a lot of outreach. I've sent tens of thousands of messages for clients, and you get no response and you don't really know what's going on. What I started doing with clients over time is creating a LinkedIn newsletter for them. And so when we're connecting, and then we're sending a follow-up series. And this is what we did with Company B. We started sending multiple follow-up series, and we started getting more responses. Company B, I think we virtually got no responses at all. Like, I can't even remember any responses we got. But I set up a newsletter for them. People connected, and they got hundreds of newsletter subscribers. They got, not nearly as many as Company B. But with Company B, we started getting replies. That's interesting. I'm looking forward to it. So you're building confidence. That's really, that they're interpreting it in the right way, and you'll know specifically if you're actually talking to them and get into a conversation with them. So.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Now, a few of you have asked about the link to the workbook. So it's actually on your screen in the resources section. So there's a window on, I think, on your left-hand side. And at the very top of there, I think I've called it Workbook Trailblazer Mastery. That's the workbook link. So if you click on there, then it sends you to a PDF and you can download that. And when you get the on-demand recording tomorrow, you can go back through and fill it in. I think there's 7 pages in there, I think, aren't there, Derek?
7 pages, yeah. They can also just go to trailblazermastery.com/workbook, and they may need to add another slash.
Perfect. So that's Robert and Keith, that's answered your questions there. How often would you suggest repeating your story on LinkedIn? This comes from Sarah. So you mentioned, I think in one of those slides, that you set the scene, take them through the story, the narrative, and lead them to the end point. When do you start repeating that again?
Well, that's a great question. And I prefer the word narrative rather than story. So the narrative, if you think about you're creating a narrative that the buyer can relate to, think of it like you're creating a movie and your buyer is the central character in the movie and you're like the authority on solving their problem. So there's all these different facets to a movie like that. And when someone's in a situation, a lot of sellers will just want to jump to the end of the movie where they're focused on their product. But the buyers don't think like that. They're a basic story is a person, they have a goal, they run into an obstacle, and they have a problem that they can't solve. It's a persistent problem, and then finally they find a solution and they learn a lesson. So that kind of structure outlines with what I put in the book from more of a buyer perspective. So you don't really have to think in terms of telling a sequential story. Yeah. It's more about just writing about the different parts of the story, and people will just be attracted to that. It's like watching a movie where someone like you is the star of the movie, and you're just interested in that kind of movie. I mean, think about the kind of movies you watch on Netflix or TV shows. Yeah. That's really interesting. I'm engaged in that. And, like a TV series, like multiple episodes, and they don't tell the story like one, step of the story after another. They tell this and they're filling in the gaps and there's a cliffhanger. And so you're just kind of evoking the story, essentially. Yes. So if you go through the workbook and you answer all those questions, you think, okay, there's 8 elements. I could write an article about this part. I could write an article about that part. And so somehow your reader will just read it and they say, there's something about that I want to read. I want to read their next article. It's not like you're telling a sequential story. Yeah, you're evoking the story. Yeah.
I hope that's helped, Sarah. Fabrizio has asked, is it possible to do the 5 steps in different medias? So, for example, LinkedIn, email, phone, text message. Where's the 5 step?
Well, you could do it in different media. I mean, the thing is you want people to follow along, right? So if you sent out, part of the 5 steps on one media and part of the 5 steps on another media, you might reach different people. They might not connect. Personally, in my experience, and I just work with consulting firms and it's B2B and we're all on LinkedIn. I've never really run into that issue before. I find it's good to focus on one channel,
I guess in answer to your question, Fabrizio, it's, obviously we're kind of LinkedIn, Dux-Soup related, but there's no reason not to try. I guess you've got different user groups or different subscribers that work with different mediums. So there's no reason why you couldn't try it.
It would probably work. It would just take longer. It would probably just take a lot longer. It would be more, it would take longer to get it across, to get it reach enough people with enough messages that they kind of got it. I'm thinking, I would have to know more specifics about your situation.
Hey, Fabrizio, let us know how you get on if you give that a whirl. Brian missed the workbook link. Yeah, Brian, it's in the top there on the resource section. Hopefully you found it now. Sonia has asked, the narrative, the story, does it have to come from the company level or can it come from an individual contributor? So I think the question there is, if you're looking at your problem solving, are you looking at it from a business perspective to try and solve a business problem or an individual's perspective?
Well, it depends on who your target audience is. Mm-hmm. What you want is for your target audience to see themselves in the story and they go, oh yeah, I see that problem. For example, the slide that I showed earlier with the before and after, this is a client I'm working with right now, and he's a cybersecurity lawyer. And he tells this story that he calls the Friday afternoon trap. So he's actually speaking to 4 individual audiences at once with that story. And in the story, you could speak to a person. You're really speaking. Well, when you're selling to a target audience, you're really selling to a person. You're not really selling to a company. So yeah, probably to answer your question, I would say, yeah, you really want to focus on speaking to an individual or a job title or, someone that holds that title, because a company is not going to, a company can't read your story. It's a person that's reading it. I'm not sure. Did I answer that right? Does that sound like I answered the question?
I think so, but let us know if it hasn't, Sonia. If you were looking for something different. And I apologize because I'm reading everyone else's at the same time as you're answering. So my multitasking skills were perhaps not quite as fine-tuned there as I like them to be. We've just got loads of questions coming in, so I'm having a look at them all. Keith has asked, no, I'm going to come back to that one. Ricardo, let's come on to your question. How do I know when it's time to send a message that's more asking for something rather than just focusing on building trust? So when do we make that leap into, look, this is what I do and this is how I am, to, how do you fancy clicking on my link, buying my product?
Well, I think this gets back to the issue of building confidence, building buyer confidence. So if you're having, I've never gotten a client who I've not gotten to a conversation with them first. Like, they were interested, they trusted me to the point where they were willing to tell me about their problems, and we were having a conversation. Never have I ever come out and say, okay, look, here's what I do. Do you want to buy it now? That never worked for me. It's always been, now I'm working with B2B consultants, and they're selling intangible services to high trust buyers. So it depends, I want to know exactly what it is you're selling, because sometimes, yeah, there's a certain point where it's a little, it's more, it's not that complicated of a product or service. So if it's very expensive, it's very innovative, it's very complex, you're never really going to come out and say to them, this is what I got. Are you interested, or should I stop messaging you? You could try that. I mean, if you're messaging someone enough, like what I recommended with Company B is we sent out a messaging campaign, and they were asking me the same question. I'm telling them, the goal is to get into conversations. If they can't even get into a conversation, they're not really interested. Or, okay, let me answer this a different way. There's 2 key realities in B2B marketing. The first one is, out of every 100 ideal fit clients, only 5 of them are going to be in the market. And I could give you a math equation on how to figure that out. That's a very accurate figure. You're lucky if even 5% of them are active. Okay. The other issue is that B2B buyers are very risk averse. They're not gonna, they're not gonna hire the person with the best pitch. They're going to hire someone who they're already aware of, who they already trust and know, right? Because it takes a while for that trust to build. So if you're reaching out hoping to finally get a sale, and they're not getting in a conversation with you, there's no back and forth going on, they probably either they're not in the market, or you haven't built up enough trust. So it's those 2, realities.
Yeah.
Only a very small percentage in the market, and it takes a while for a business to trust you. They're not just going to suddenly buy from you right away because you reached out to them. It's not going to happen in B2B. At least with my clients, that's never worked. So.
Yeah. Okay. Keith has asked, what are your thoughts on how AI plays a role in establishing credibility?
Okay, it's kind of a a broad question, but I'm thinking maybe she's talking about using AI for copywriting. If that's what she means, then definitely AI
Sorry,
is very
key.
powerful. Like that is very helpful. Like I would like you really want to think out and kind of feel your way to, okay, what am I trying to say? Who's my target audience, right? You don't want to go to AI and say, okay, just write me a message. You want to write a message, and I use AI a lot. And I go to AI and say, okay, here's my target client. In fact, I've got a template with all kinds of information where I've created like my prototype ideal customer profile, and I fed I don't know like 60 client meetings or more, the transcripts from all the meetings, which I record on my client meetings. I fed them into ChatGPT and had that help me create this customer profile. And then I'll attach the customer profile and I'll start asking ChatGPT. I said, look, I'm trying to reach this client. Here's my offer. What kind of challenges do you think someone like that with that job title would be dealing with? Here's my ideal profile. Can you give me any suggestions on how you would reach out to that person? So you're kind of interacting with it. It's just a logic tool. So it's trying to guess what to say. And if you give it information to analyze, that you've already sort of put together yourself, focused on your target audience, it can be a really, really valuable tool. So, and for coming up with specific like proofreading, your copywriting, and it's a big improvement. Like it can write better than I can in terms of just like I'm always making a spelling mistake or something. So yeah, AI is very helpful. That's what you meant.
It's for that, isn't it? Roland has asked, there's a trend on not adding a message to outreach connection requests. That seems to go against your principles. What's your thought on it?
I have actually looked into that. I've actually, tried that, and I think the research shows that if you don't add any message, they're just as likely to connect to you if you do add a message. And I think that's basically probably close to the truth, But the first message is a golden opportunity that you don't want to miss. Because the first message is not just, will you connect with me? And then they're connected to you. What you want to do is offer them some kind of value and create curiosity in the first message. And they go, oh, and you create this expectation in their mind that there's more to it than I'm just connecting with someone who's just wants to connect with. And I get those every single day. I hardly ever get messages from people like the kind of messages that I send when I connect and that I send for my clients or help my clients write and send. So you set up that expectation, and now you can send out a follow-up series. So now you set up that expectation, you've got maybe a content series. You're educating them about something in particular that you know that they're likely to be thinking about because you've done the research. Yeah. Like that supply chain example, they're worried about this, they're worried about that. You know what they're worried about, okay? So you contact them, say, look, I'm creating some new content. I've been researching this problem. I want to send you some of the best feedback that I've gotten. And this even could be curated content, right? But it's better if you create a newsletter and you publish articles on your newsletter and then you send them a message, follow-up messages with a link to your newsletter. And then you could send 3 or 4 or more messages like once a week or so with links to new content. And then finally you could say, I hope you've been enjoying the content so far. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my newsletter. And every time you publish an article, you want to publish a post at the same time that'll go out to all your first 2 connections, and that'll increase your subscribers. I understand, like a lot of these questions are like, how do I make some sales? When can I get some clients? I've been there. I understand the frustration. But the thing is, okay, with B2B, and I'm working with B2B consultants, they just don't buy right away. They got to know you and trust you and kind of be familiar with you. So you're trying to build up that familiarity. And only 5% of them in the market. So you're dealing with those 2 issues all the time. So.
We've had another guest in the past, actually, Michael Simpson, who has a very similar approach in terms of adding value and nurturing. And he talks about nurturing as a long game. One of his key clients was someone who he nurtured through this kind of approach, your kind of approach, Derek, for 5 years before they became a client. But when they did, they dangled a big old sack of cash in front of him and had a massive project for him. So it just goes to prove that nurturing, that adding value and creating credibility and trust and building that relationship goes to, makes a massive impact on people. And at the right time, you'll be in the right place.
Yeah, and if I can add one thing, I find a lot of frustration with outreach is like, what do I write about? What do I talk about? What do they want to know about? And what I recommend doing, and this is what I do for clients, is I help them plan out. I tell them, imagine you're going to write a book, okay? You don't have to actually write a book, but imagine you're going to write a book. What's the first thing you do? You create a table of contents. There's a list of articles for you to write about. So you plan out a table of contents, you start writing one article a week. After 36 weeks, you've got 36 articles. That's basically a 50,000 word book. It's very easy to create a Kindle book. I mean, it's very easy to do. So now it takes that worry off your mind. What am I going to write about? You're writing about something and it's based on a narrative. So if you were to come up with a signature story, it just makes everything so much easier. Like, I'll just go back to that example of a client I'm working with now, the cybersecurity lawyer. He has this story called the Friday Afternoon Trap. And he says, imagine you're a chief information security officer. It's Friday afternoon. The weekend is ahead. It's going to be sunny. You've got a barbecue planned. You're just about to sign off from work and something shifts on the screen that isn't right. Oh no, something's wrong. So you stay up, stay late. A couple of your team stay late. You dig in. This is worse than you thought. We're going to have to come in on Saturday. You come in on Saturday, it's worse than you thought. It's terrible. Personal information has been stolen. You're scrambling. Everybody's sending messages back and forth. We should have fixed this months ago. Slack chat, emails. You come in Sunday, you're still working on it. Monday morning, you're still working on it. You think, okay, it's time to call the lawyers. What my client says, it's too late. Because all those messages that you were sending back over the weekend, that's what he calls the 72 exposure gap. All those messages are discoverable. So a plaintiff's lawyer, some ambulance chasing lawyer, can now build a class action lawsuit and subpoena all that information and win the case. And that could cost the company tens of millions of dollars because it's not covered by client. I forget. Confidentiality. It's not covered. And all you had to do was hire a lawyer first, and he would put these things in place. And he tells that story in about a minute, like way quicker and way better than I do. And I interviewed him and I turned that into all kinds of content, and we're building a plan for him. And now I'm suggesting, hey, you could just create a book. We could turn this into a book. Once you've got a book, it's very easy to create a workshop. And you just watched my presentation. What's my signature story? Company A and Company B. Two companies I work with, my signature story. That's the basis for my book. Yeah. And this client I just told you about, I weave in examples from him. So it makes it actually fun and interesting to create the content. So if you come up with that story, that's really everything. It unlocks everything.
Yeah. I like that analogy actually about the content page. I think that's a really good idea. A couple of people have asked for your discount code. I don't think they can see it on the workbook, so I'll add that to the email when you get the on-demand.
It's right down the bottom right-hand corner. I think on every page it says 50% right down the bottom right-hand corner. You click the link, it takes you to Amazon. So it's on. Go ahead.
If it's not there, it's because I've perhaps uploaded the wrong workbook, the wrong version.
Oh, okay.
So, all right. But I'll make sure that I send you in the email with the on-demand link. I will make sure that you have it. So do not fear. We've got a couple more questions. I know that was Robert's question. So Robert, we'll make sure we get that to you. Ashley has said, great content, thank you. I'm busy repositioning my recruitment business to retained-only exec search for senior roles. This is a very specific question, actually, Derek. You might want to take this offline.
I used to run a recruiting agency, actually. So
sounds like it. I have 13,000 plus LinkedIn connections. I'm interested in how you might approach this.
She's going to reposition her whole business?
by the sounds of it. Perhaps, Ashley, I might suggest that you actually send Derek a LinkedIn message, and perhaps you can take that discussion away from the webinar and have a bit of a chat. Is that okay, Derek?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a big question. That's a positioning question.
If you click on the speaker bio, then Derek's LinkedIn details are in there. So you can get in touch with him. He's very easy to find in the nicest sense of the word on LinkedIn anyway. So if you pop into LinkedIn and put in Derek Little, Trailblazer Mastery, then you'll find him there. So I'm going to say thank you now to Derek. We've come to the end of the questions, and I'm just going to nick the slideware off him. Just for those of you who are still with us, just to let you know, on your screens there's a couple of buttons. One is to our next 15-minute mastery session, which is on the 16th of June. We're going back to basics for LinkedIn, so we're looking at profile posting and getting engagement. So that's great if you're kind of coming back to LinkedIn after a break, or you've not really used it much at all, or you just want a little refresh on what's changed. So that is with myself and Giles in 2 weeks' time. And after that, I'll do the trumpet fanfare, because we are launching our AI offering. So we're looking at individually personalized messages. It's finally here, Dux-Soup AI. Will has been working with the team in the background to get this up and running. So we're launching that with the webinar on the 30th of June. So again, the button is on your screen to register for that session. That will be a slightly longer session. So please register for that one, get it in your diaries. There's also the free trial link on your screens, and the book a demo session as well. And obviously for those who would like to ask any specific questions, then you can get in touch with info@dux-soup.com. And you can sign up under the resources section, I think, let me just double check that. I've just said that right. It's not resources, is it? It's in the product section on our website. If you go to services, then you can book any of those one-to-one sessions that you might be wanting for specific tech questions and queries. You'll get to speak to Scott or to Giles in person, one-to-one. And get all of your questions answered. So that is it from us. I want to say a massive, massive thank you to Derek for being with us today. As I said, your on-demand link will come out to you all tomorrow, and I will make sure the links for the workbook is in there as well as the discount code. And hopefully I look forward to seeing all of you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks, Derek. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, everyone.
There we go.